Hi and welcome back to my walkthrough of Homeland the game. Even though the first episode of this walkthrough was pretty lengthy, you didn't actually see that much. Of course, I deployed some new threats on the board, I claimed them with the case lead cards, I sent some agents and soldiers, but apart from that there was not really much going on. So I really want to focus on the threat analysis for this second episode of my walkthrough of Homeland, and as I already told you in the first episode, I won't be doing a full playthrough because it really doesn't make any sense. I received a very helpful comment on The Geek by Benji, and he was making me aware that I interpreting the rules a little bit incorrectly, let's put it that way. It's not an actual error, but it's basically not the wisest thing to do, and really the way how this player aid is being set up, I really was under the impression that you have to do the mandatory action first before you go into the actual optional actions. But the rules are pretty precise on this one. You may do them at any time during your turn in any order. So thanks again for letting me know or making me aware that I'm, let's say, interpreting the rules a little bit differently than they supposed to be interpreted. So from now on I will do that definitely right. And now the special abilities from characters like Sol Berenson make way more sense when I get the intel card first before I have to play them to any actual threat. So basically my choice is much higher when I, let's say, only would start with the normal 3 cards that I get from the last round. So this is definitely a very huge advantage. And of course, if you are able to check out, for example, the plot card here by sending an agent there before you actually claim the case, this of course can also greatly help you in order to determine which threat to choose and which you should avoid actually. Enough of the preamble, let's dive into round number 3, and yeah, I think it's not really a surprise who will start this round number 3. It's the black player, who would also receive the terrorist marker for this turn. We still don't have any threats on the imminent level, so we can directly jump into step number 2 of the terrorist turn, and this would be to progress all threats on the board. So definitely we will see one threat analysis at the start of the next round if we don't see any air drone or drone strike happening, but there still might pop up some more of those imminent threats when we reveal new ones during the last step of this round. Oh come on, this is not so nice. Oh come on, this is really this stack of cards to move them ahead. It is really one thing that's a little bit annoying in this one, but yeah, I think we can deal with that. So, okay, so much for advancing the new threats or the existing threats. Let's reveal new threats. So here we have the guerrilla dissidents. With 1 intel card, they start on the guarded level as you can see. Let's go with the second threat. This directly starts at the severe level, also guerrilla dissidents. Okay. So this will be moved here, and last but not least, what do we have here? A low threat. Oh come on, this is a political splinter group. That's really not that big of a deal. I think we won't be deploying any agent in this turn for the black player. So I think we will also keep our soldier with us. So I think we will just claim this case because he really wants to make sure that he will be the lead on this case in order to make things right. And this is really what's pretty important. Don't care about the threats that are far down on the track or maybe to the far right of the track. It's really important. Focus on the threats that are coming close to the imminent level. I think he will discard this card here, the warrantless wiretap. Okay, we know that as of episode number 1. And this will give him a cloud token. And I think he will go for an additional asset. So he will spend those 3 tokens here. And he's allowed to draw those 2 cards, and they're both great. This one allows her to take Sol Berenson from another player or the discard pile, and this is huge because the Sol Berenson is in play and activated by the grey player. So I think this is really a great opportunity for the black player in order to do some little asset control, which is really important. So I guess we will take Mira Berenson, the wife of Sol, and I think we have to discard Mike Faber here. And I guess for now we will keep this card face down in front of us. So I think we won't play it openly at this point in time. So we keep that. We have a look what the grey player might be doing. After all, he might be in the same team as we are. And maybe I should show you the agenda card of at least one agent. And let's just do that for the black player. And he's basically a loyal agent, so he's really looking for some support here in order to make sure. And that's why I really went with Carrie Matheson, because you get a blue +1 to all of your cases, and this is always a good thing. And I think it's time to play some actual cards. I cannot really remember if he sent an agent there, so I'm not so sure if he did that, but to be honest, I think he did. I think he really did, because I was using Carrie Matheson and he said, let's find out what's going on there. So, and we know there is really much going on. So I think he really is considering to give this case away, so not burn any more cards there, because he saw so many red cards on this case. So I think it really doesn't matter. So I think he will focus on the next cards here. So I think he will play his first intel card. This needs to go to the case of another player, to the Sectarian Insurgents. And I think he still feels confident that he might be able to neutralize this threat here. So he plays another card to the other Sectarian Insurgents. So he's becoming quite of a specialist for those insurgents. Unfortunately, he didn't draw a drone strike card, because in this case he would have sent this soldier to the imminent threat in order to bomb it down basically, but he was not lucky enough, so I think we have to deal with that. And I think this is basically it what he can do. So he will just draw his 3 cards, and this time I did remember to redraw up to my hand size. Let's move over to the golden player, and I think without checking he will claim this case here at the low level here. And from the amount of cases we see all up here, I'm not so sure if we will actually see that threat being analyzed, because they can happen a lot. So there will be no cases coming out here, the severe, elevated, or even the imminent level. So I think we don't really have to care much about this threat down there. I think he will also use the special ability of Judge Jeffrey Turner here, which would allow him to discard 1 intel card and draw a new card. And he will discard this card here. Now the first players are starting to wonder, why do you burn or discard a blue card and not a red card? Then he said, yeah, it's a low card, I want to look for a higher card, and also this card doesn't give me any tokens here, and that's the only reason why I'm doing that. But still, he would be allowed to draw a 4th card, and this is also going back to the special ability of Judge Jeffrey Turner, which gives him, or who gives him, a +1 for his hand size. He will also discard 1 of his intel card, and again he's discarding a blue card. Again he's saying, I only have blue cards, and again I went for the card with a level 1, and this would give me 1 cloud token. And as you can see, I don't have any cloud tokens. I need to do something to claim some valuable assets here. You have to understand that, guys. So the others can believe him or not. Personally, I'm quite suspicious now, but let's see what he will do next. And I guess he will deploy 1 of his agents to this case here, where he is the case lead apparently, so we would be allowed to have a look at the plot card. And here we see the plot card, turn disgruntled agent, and the fallout effect is not so nice, which says case lead exposure. Exposure means he has to reveal all his cards in hand and has to keep them openly until he plays them. All new cards he's about to draw afterwards he can keep hidden basically, but all the cards that he had to expose stay open until he plays them. This is really not a very nice situation. It's kind of okay for the loyal agent, but for the opportunist player or for the mole, that's really not so nice. So I think that's basically very valuable information. The complexity is medium, so in total this threat has a strength of 6. Of course, we still have to add or subtract any intel cards to this threat. He still has to play 2 cards, and I think he will put this card on this case here, which is about to be analyzed, I think, at the start of the next turn. And he will play a second card to this case here. And I guess you already assumed it right what card he played. He really wants to make sure that this case will be neutralized, that's for sure. He could send a soldier here in order to make sure that this case will be solved, but I think he still has some time left, at least 1 additional round, so I think for now he feels confident enough. So he has an agent here, maybe he might send another agent during the next turn. So I think for the golden player this was basically all he could do. So let's just draw his 3 hands. Remember, he has a hand size of 4. For Grey it's pretty straightforward. He has to claim this threat here, the guerrilla dissidents, so he don't need to send any agents for now. The threat is still on the, let's say, very low level. It's still guarded, so I think there is no immediate risk. For free he will hire an agent, and I think he will immediately deploy this agent because of the special ability of Saul, which says when you deploy an agent, draw an intel card. And I think I played this wrong in the last video. I mixed that up. Basically I was mixing up the asset and agent. So really, when you deploy an agent, draw an intel card, and this is what we will do now. So we will deploy an agent to this threat here, the Lone Wolf organization. Therefore we gain an additional intel card, which is nice. And here we see the plot card, the diversionary attack, which has an impact of 0. This is now interesting. So the actual impact of this card is a 0, but the backside of this block led us to believe that this is a relatively high impact of 2, but the reality is not that dangerous. So this is basically a very good card for the loyal agent, possibly, because nothing really bad will happen. So even though when this threat will be more or less being executed, then in this case we don't see any terrorist tokens to be added on the board, but still we have to deal with the global fallout effect, which more or less affects all the players rather than the normal fallout effect. And here it says immediately reveal 1 new threat. This can be dangerous, but it doesn't have to be. So I think overall he's pretty fine with that case. And I think he will play one of his intel cards to this case to the right, because there's really a chance that this will be analyzed sooner or later. And I think he will play 1 additional card to one of his own cases down there. And I guess this is all what he will do. So let's just redraw to our hand size of 3 for the normal player, and these were basically all the actions from the players for this 3rd round. So let's start our 4th round, and I think this will be the last round I will actually show you. We will shuffle those case lead cards in order to form a new starting player deck. We will reveal the next case lead, and here the Grey player will start the next round, and of course he will get the terrorist marker. And this time we can finally dive into step number 2, which says analyze imminent threats. And here we have this pretty crowded threat from the Lone Wolf organization, and we will directly dive into the threat analysis and see what's going on. First thing that we will do, we will reveal the actual plot. So we have the Amsterdam sniper attack with the complexity of 0. We will place the organization on top of that, and then we add those 2 values. So the base complexity of this case is a 7, which is already pretty high. Good thing is we have 2 agents which are in favor us at this point in time, and the soldier here cannot do any more help, so we more or less put him aside. He won't bring us anything of importance here. Of course we have to claim who the case lead is, because this is now important for the fallout effect, which says the case lead must discard a soldier or burn an asset, and I think we are pretty positive that we won't be able to neutralize that threat. So let's put all the red cards on this side. Oh, here's 1 more. all the blue cards on the other side. So we add things up. So here you have 6 points, 8 points for this one, and 8 points is barely enough to match the base complexity, but we add so many additional red cards that this case is definitely lost. If there would be a golden card in that deck, this golden card would be triggered immediately. If there would be several gold cards, then all of those cards would be triggered. So this is really something that more or less takes higher priority than anything else. In this case, this would mean +1 to the impact of the threat. So this would mean 2 instead of a 1, which could be in favor for the terrorist or in favor for the loyal agent. In this case, this is clearly something for the terrorist player because this is a lost threat, so we would be allowed to add 2 of those terrorist tokens, but luckily we don't have to deal with this golden card. And now it's time to deal with the consequences of this plot succeed side of the threat analysis board. So plot succeeds if the red total is equal to or higher than the blue. I think this is clearly the case. Add terrorist markers to the terrorist track equal to the plot's impact. As you can remember, the plot impact is 1, so we add the first terrorist token here. Then all players gain cloud tokens equal to the plot's impact. Of course, this is also a 1, so all players gain 1 of those cloud tokens, which is of course a great way for the opportunist player in order to win this game, because he gains 1 victory point for each of those cloud tokens. The other players are also quite okay with those tokens because they can still use it to buy actual assets. And the last thing to do would be to apply the fallout. In this case, this only affects the case lead, so the grey player, case lead, must discard a soldier or burn an asset. And that's why it's always wise to have a soldier in his back pocket. Not really a good way to describe it, but yeah, you know what I mean. So we will burn this agent instead of Saul Berenson here, of course, because he's a very helpful resource, and of course could bring us 2 victory points by the end of the game. If we were able to neutralize this threat, we would gain this token, which we put on the agency track accordingly. Again, this is only an impact of 1, so we would gain 1 token here. The case lead, and only the case lead, would gain the rep tokens equal to the plot's impact. So this case is really important, why you have to be the case lead and you have to choose your cases or threats which you can actually neutralize, or where you have at least the good feeling that you might be able to neutralize this one. And last but not least, the case lead, and only the case lead, would be allowed to gain the organization advantage, which is a one-time effect basically, and it's written on the organization card. In this case, he would be allowed to draw 1 intel card. Not really great, but yeah, I think better than nothing. But in this case, we weren't able to neutralize this threat. If there were additional threats on the Immanila, we would do the same for the remaining threats, but we don't have them. Next, we would then move those threats up. So in the next round, we might have to resolve 3 imminent threats if we would not be able to use our drone strike. And remember, the drone strikes are being facilitated through those asset cards here as well. So in this case, the senator here would allow you to do a drone strike to any threat where you have at least 2 soldiers deployed to. And with 1 card, you can do as many drone strikes as you like, basically, as long as there are enough soldiers assigned to those threats. Okay, let's go back to the board. We would move them up accordingly. Then we would reveal 2 new threats, and then we would see the next round. But at least at this point, we are pretty sure that we have at least 1 mole, or maybe the opportunist player in the game. Of course, we know that for sure. We have 4 cards in play, so there could be any combination of 2 loyal agent, a mole, or the opportunist. But we're definitely sure that we have at least 1 or 2 players that are playing against the loyal agents here, because the amount of red threat or intel cards assigned to this threat was pretty high. So I think the loyal agent, right now we know that the black player is a loyal agent, is pretty suspicious as of now, and I think he will play it definitely way more carefully as he did that in the first two or three rounds. As mentioned, this game goes on until one of those tracks is being completed. In the case of this track, the terrorist player immediately wins the game. If there is no terrorist player, and maybe only the opportunist player, then all players have lost the game, so even the opportunist player. And if the other track would be completed, then we would do the final scoring. Beforehand, we would see an accusation phase where all the players are allowed to accuse another player of being the terrorist mole. And if you do that successfully, you gain 6 victory points. If you accuse the wrong person, then you lose 3 victory points. So there's always some level of thought where you have to think, okay, do I take the risk here and accuse someone, or if I decide not to accuse anyone, which is also an option. Of course, if the terrorist player has won the game for the terrorist track, then there won't be any accusations, of course. As usual, I will try to keep my final thoughts as short as possible, as I'm really not really good at it. So I can only say that I enjoyed Homeland a big deal, but as I'm a huge fan of Battlestar Galactica or Camelot, this didn't really surprise me. There might be definitely some mechanics which you might recognize from the above games, such as the agenda cards, and where you don't know if you have the traitor in the game or not, but it's definitely unique enough to bring it on the table beside the other two. And here Homeland really scores because it's much quicker than Battlestar Galactica, so I guess I might find it on the table more often than Galactica, and it's also fun with just 3 player, which is not so much the case with Camelot or Galactica. We found that the 6-player game was a little bit too much, as it's really tough to follow each thread and who played cards to it and who didn't, but there are still enough opportunities to call your co-players a mole or an opportunist. I'm not entirely sure if I like the final accusation part of the scoring, because with just a lucky shot you can take the terrorist player out of the game, and if you're already way behind in respect to victory points, it doesn't really matter if you lose additional 3 victory points for the wrong accusations. But again, great game, awesome atmosphere, another job well done Gale Force 9. Hope to see you soon in one of my next videos, and until then, bye bye!